This episode of Queery is sponsored by the audiobook of High School, the new memoir written and read by musicians Tegan and Sara. High School is a revelatory and unique coming-of-age story of Tegan and Sara Quinn, identicals twins from Calgary, Alberta, who grew up at the height of grunge and rave culture in the 90s, well before they became the celebrated musicians and global LGBTQ icons we know today. Get High School wherever audiobooks are sold today.
This is a show about individual experience and personal identity. There may be times when folks use identifying words or phrases that don't feel right to you. That's part of what we're exploring here. Please listen with an open heart, and as always, I welcome your polite, engaged feedback, and I encourage you to continue the conversation in your own life and with your own community. Welcome to Queery.
Queeros, Cammie here. Oh my God, I'm incredibly excited to tell you that you can pre-order my book. I have a book coming up. It is about having an eating disorder and dating the captain of the football team and realizing that I was gay while attending a Catholic college where I could not come out at the same time as all the stuff in the movie Spotlight happened. It is funny. It is serious. It is lovely. It is called Save Yourself. I'm very proud of it. It comes out in March 2020, but you can pre-order it right now by going to saveyourselfbook.com. Please get those pre-orders in. It helps me make the New York Times bestseller list. So I am going to mention this probably on every Queery until March. I'm going to be out doing a big book tour that is yet to be announced, and get behind this book. If you listen to this show, you could do me such a solid. If everybody that listened to this show bought the book, it would be a bestseller. It would be a bestseller. So I'm incredibly excited to tell you to go to saveyourselfbook.com and pre-order. Yes. Also, hey, speaking of books, today on the show, my friends Tegan and Sara Quinn from the band Tegan and Sara, I got an opportunity to interview them last week and also host one of their book launch events in Los Angeles. I really think these people are such talented artists and so good at speaking on their own behalf. I hope that you enjoy this interview. It's the only time I've had somebody back on the show, but it's because I had interviewed them separately and I thought it was a great chance to bring them back in together. So please enjoy this chat and go grab their book, High School. I've already read it and listened to it, and I loved it.
I've been feeling wrong, but I'm still holding on, darling. I know it's careless.
Sarah needed it.
Thank you.
And we are ready.
Just so you know, I signed right here.
What a thrill.
Just so you know.
I'm sitting at a table signed by Sarah.
What an honor that must be to be so close to Sarah's signature. I bet y'all have never seen that from each other.
Nope.
I always have guests introduce themselves. You know that because you've both been on the podcast separately. But will you introduce yourselves?
Yes. My name is Tegan, and I am Sarah's sister.
And I am Sara, and I am Tegan's sister, younger sister.
And we play in a band called Tegan and Sara.
Yes, younger by just...
It doesn't
it's
matter.
In the book. Just like a few, yeah.
Don't underestimate how important those 8 minutes were for me.
Yeah, I don't.
Like in womb time, 8 minutes, it was amazing.
How does that play out?
I mean, I think it was probably extremely distressing. Imagine, you come into this world, you're with this other baby developing, and then suddenly they're just like, ah! They just go flying down the tube or whatever it is. The tube. And then you're just like, oh shit.
Sexuality, body, what is it called again? Anatomy 101.
Tegan went flying down the tube, and I was like both terrified and also like, it just got a lot better in this apartment.
Right.
And
right.
So it's definitely
Sarah's done a lot
played
of
a role in
pre-birth
my life.
therapy.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's you're being serious, right? I mean,
That's
amidst
like a thing.
these jokes, this is definitely real.
Of course it is.
She saw this therapist, Cameron, you got to do it. She
This
does
is not true.
The therapy said it is
It's
true.
not true. The way
she does.
You should have just said it. You set it up too much.
Sorry,
It's easy for
she
me to
did this
tell you no.
therapy. You do all your talking inside this plastic bag thing, and then they pop it at the end, and you come down.
Oh, you
is
did
that
the
how it
thing?
works?
Come down a slide.
Interesting.
You're actually born.
Is the bag popping the placenta, Tegan? That's not how it works. So,
Where
just
did you do that
FYI.
thing? You did that
No.
thing? What? Come on.
No, I did not. I just know.
You should have never agreed to do this with both of us.
Listen,
It's annoying. No, I'm just kidding.
I just
It
want
just
to be
feels like
very
you guys
clear.
know each other. You know what I mean? And there's like
Yeah.
going to be a whole rapport thing. And then
Yeah.
here I am, useless.
But I feel rapport-y with you.
Yeah, no, I know. We're actually,
We have a rapport.
I really like you guys. That's just
We
a
like
true
you.
thing. Yeah.
Well, that's good because I thought we were friends.
We are
so
friends.
Good to know.
we are friends.
Okay.
I was listening yesterday.
One time
to,
you watched me eat a donut.
What'd you say?
One time you watched me eat a donut.
That's right. Yeah, we went to whatever that was.
a restaurant.
Well, I also just mean it was between meals. It was like a
yeah,
weird.
but I'd walked in
You
the
guys
sun
sound
for an
really
hour.
close. Very intimate friendship.
Yeah, close
It was
friends.
between meals. We hung out and
We had
you
a donut
watched
between
me
meals.
eat a donut.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. Okay, we're gonna behave now. You go ahead and be in charge.
Oh, I mean, I'm in a zone right now where I'm cool with either of us, but I'll take this one. Oh, well, sure, if you want to. I was listening to the book yesterday. That's part of why you're here. The other one is obviously the hang that we're having, but y'all have a book that is out now, as of now, when this podcast will be out.
Oh, shit. Sorry. It's out now.
Say it again.
It's out now.
Yeah, it's out now. It's because this is the future. So it's
Yeah.
out now. And it comes with the audiobook is, I don't think I've actually experienced anything like that. Did you have
you
like
really?
a model?
You're really listening to it, the audiobook.
Yeah, I'm listening to it.
Oh, I thought when you said, I've been listening to your book, I thought you just made it like you did the mixy-do thing where you think that you're talking about the album, but you're listening to the audiobook.
Yes, they sent me the audiobook and I started listening to it.
What do you think about it? You're like the first person we know who's listened to the audiobook.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yes.
Oh, I have never really heard anything like it. I was thinking that because I also have copies of the book. I literally have copies of the book. I have an advanced reading copy and then I have like a hardcover, like this is the copy. It's my whole house. I've had to move everything out.
That's
It's
how
just
gay you
copies
are.
of
Like,
high school.
they're just like, it's like how many copies in different formats
Yes,
of the book
exactly.
you have shows how gay you are.
Exactly. And you guys know I'm level 10 gay. So I have I actually do really like to have things on multiple mediums. But yeah, the audiobook is really unusual because you found while you were writing the book these tapes. Is that what the deal is?
Yes.
That's what it says. Yes.
Yeah.
Where were they? Where were the tapes?
We went to a storage unit that we have with all our music stuff in it, and we thought we were going to find cassette tapes with our first band's music. Our first band was called Plunk.
Plunk. Yes.
Yeah, and we had 2 cassette tapes that we had recorded with Plunk. One was called Who's in Your Band, and the other one was called Playday. We
Yes.
found neither. And then we thought we might find some Sara and Tegan tapes, which was our next band before we became Tegan and Sara. We also found none of those. But what we did find that day was maybe 20 plus hours of VHS recordings of us, video that we had shot in the 90s when we were in high school. So we have that, and then some friends of ours helped us. It took almost 6 months to find all the other tapes. It's so weird that we didn't keep any of our music, and no one we love kept it either. But here we are.
Wow.
And that stuff.
That's in the audiobook. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that
what you were.
stuff- yeah.
That's what you were telling us about. Yeah,
Right. No,
I
I
haven't
just
heard
mean-
it. Does it sound cool?
It does sound cool. It's your voices are so, it sounds like you, but you also have, thicker accents and then
Like Canadian accents?
yes, which maybe to you don't even have accents, but on the tape you have some thicker accents, and then you also it sounds like you, but without. We use our vocal cords throughout our life and get calluses and our voices deepen. We don't talk about this a lot if people aren't men going through puberty. We don't talk about how like our voices deepen through our life and
Right.
change.
Right.
But you both sound very young. Like you sound very
16 years old.
you sound very 16 years old. I wonder, so when you listened to them or saw them, did you sound different to you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We
I don't
talk
just
about
mean
the
content.
accent.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
I
right.
mean, yeah, like when I listen to anything from a certain sort of like, let's call it like the first like 4 or 5 years of our career, like to me, we sound really Canadian. And I think I have started to wonder if I have adopted this kind of performative voice that is more American because I I mean, Tegan and I both got made fun of all the time. We would do press and people would be like, oh, how about that? And like, what do you think about that, eh? And so we were just like, well, geez, note to self, like definitely drop all the Canadian stuff because we were getting made fun of. And so Americans are rude, but I just think like it also taught us how to blend in with you better.
100%. There's no doubt in my mind that you absolutely changed your, like no doubt.
Adaptation 101, we were like, Americans are very rude, and so we need to start talking like them. So I never say drama anymore. I never say pasta anymore. Like,
there's something else that you
did think they were. I think people thought they were teasing us, though. I do feel the need to.
Tegan is afraid because I'm saying Americans are rude. Listen,
they were just teasing us
alone in
we
my
young.
kitchen. Sometimes I make pasta, and I say to myself, I'm making pasta. Just so that I can say it, you know?
God.
Yeah, well,
we
sure.
also sang in British accents. That changed too.
Oh, I want to talk about that in just a moment. Yes,
Great.
I do.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
I hear that you're saying people thought they were teasing you because you were young.
Yes.
But that is something that I've, so often thought with both of you is the idea that you would have to represent yourself on any level at the age that you were when you started this band, and then also at the age that you were when the band started to have success, is totally bonkers to me. Like, I cannot imagine doing an introspective interview about like why and your songs always, were very like emotional, they were really raw and personal. And so it would strike me that the interview questions would then be like, what is this about and how serious? But you're, a teen.
I think you're touching on something that is hard for a lot of people to believe, which is why I'm really glad we have these archival materials, is that I think there's this idea that what we were thinking about, feeling, singing about, that those things were fantasies, like that they were ideas that we had about love or had about life. And I think what is significant, for me anyways, about talking about the book and explaining what had happened to us, like between the ages of 15 and 18, I had full romantic, intimate, sexual, and emotional relationships with women in secret. I was dealing with homophobia. I was dealing with drugs and alcohol. I was dealing with divorce. I was dealing with, violence. I was dealing with trauma. And so the things that we are writing about or thinking about at that time, they're very authentic, advanced kind of experiences. And while we were young and we were sort of filtering them through an adolescent lens, I think the music and the interviews, once you get past the sort of British accents and the sort of Canadian accent, what sort of is nested there is very substantial, information and experience.
But deeply complex for us to talk about with adults when we were teenagers.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
And
we had none of the language.
Explain
no
yourself to
language.
us. Yeah, that's exactly what that sounds like.
Yeah. And there was such an awkwardness on their part too, which I didn't understand at that time. And now with 20 years, experience, I have such a different perspective that the majority of the people we spoke to were likely men in their 30s and 40s. And so I can remember receiving a lot of criticism from the queer community when we were in our early 20s because they felt we weren't gay enough and didn't talk enough about being queer, like as if we had a say over what was printed, just a disconnect on how things work. But there also was just such discomfort. I think at that stage of our career, we were so young. The journalists were so much older than us. There was the vernacular around queer identity and sexuality was so small at that time. And so I think a lot of journalists that I spoke to about myself didn't want to dig too deep into the music because there was an awkwardness, and
that makes
sense.
Think
it just made the early part of our career and our association to the industry. Like Sarah and I were so anti-establishment when we graduated high school and got into the industry. And I think part of it was just discomfort. We knew we weren't like everybody else. And so rather than be rejected, we just wanted to make our own path.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I think it's anybody that listens to, I listened to something that you wrote down and it says I was 19 and it's like, oh, I think you were maybe singing that at an age that is like pretty close to that. As opposed to like ABBA singing about a dancing queen who's 17. I think they were maybe like in their late 20s / 32. Right. So it's just a different sort of a thing, I think, for folks to feel nostalgia, but you're like, no, this is like now, I'm I'm singing about now or whatever.
It's also so nice as you get older and you like for Tegan now to sing that song about feeling 19. I mean, there's just all this like adult voice and perspective and context that comes in now when we sing those songs too. And it, I always wondered, like, are we going to feel weird and creepy about the songs we wrote as teenagers and young adults as we start to get older? I mean, we're almost 40 now, so it is kind of strange sometimes to like sing this material that is about our younger selves. Or, in the case of the memoir and our new album, we are writing and revealing things about ourselves when we were very young, when we were 15, 16, 17 years old. Like, to handle that material required a lot of sort of like tenderness, and also like, I don't want to exploit 15-year-old me who is having sex for the first time with a girl. Like, I don't want to exploit that girl that I was having relationships with or a relationship with. So, there's all this kind of like gentle sort of like gentleness that we're sort of like using right now, because I want to talk about these things and I want to talk about them thoughtfully and with a sort of sophisticated emotional intelligence, but I don't want to like also pretend like, I don't know. I don't like when people make this assumption that at 15 years old, we don't have these complicated emotional or sexual identities. And
Sure.
At least for me, I did. And so I don't like this idea that I was like writing in bubble letters in my journal, like, I like Naomi. That is not what I was thinking about Naomi, my first secret girlfriend.
Yes. And also, I mean, I don't know about Naomi specifically, who's in the book, but I know you both are still friends with your high school friends, that you're both still close with some of the folks that might be in this book. And I just wrote a memoir myself, and I will say that it is really strange to try to figure out what you're going to include about other people and what you're going to include about yourself, especially for somebody who cares so much about queer representation, as I know all three of us do, and trying to figure out like what to be honest about versus what you're talking about, this like line of self-exploitation. But what you both did is like, this is detailed. Like, this is like a very detailed book. It is like you have clearly some really strong memories of this time. Like, it is like you are talking about stuff so in such a visceral way. Is that just how you remember things, or is that just how you remember this time? Like, is high school so specific in this way, or is this how, like, could you talk this way about your early days touring, things like that?
I think it's safe to say both Sara and I do have very good memories, and we are storytellers by nature. And so, high school, but a lot of our life we've spent telling the stories of our life. Maybe it's a product of being so transient and constantly traveling, and so having to tell people about ourselves and tell our story to our friends and family and our activities over and over and over again. We've always had a passion for documenting ourselves long before there was social media. So starting with our childhood, there's an enormous cache of documentation. So I will admit that I think we have very strong memories. We are still friends with all our friends from high school, so those memories are pretty fresh because we talk about each other and our experiences a lot. But we also found, probably 28 or 30 hours of VHS footage from that time.
Yeah.
Our friends were incredibly generous. They sent us anything they'd kept from that time. So we had countless journals and notes. I connected with an old friend who I hadn't seen since high school, and she showed up to the dinner with a binder with 50 notes Sara and I had written her that like laid out our entire grade 10 experience. So we had a lot of help writing the book in that sense. I also sat down with most of the key people in the book and interviewed them all. Some of them gave me 4 or 5 hours of their time. We scanned hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos over the 18 months that we were working on the book. So we had a lot of help. We didn't just sit down. Don't picture us in a forest with
I'm
nothing
literally
but our
like,
memory.
how the fuck did they remember this?
Yeah.
Got it. Crowdsourcing.
A lot. Like, we had a lot
took it to the team.
pull from.
Yeah.
We almost like wrote the book, and there was an enormous amount of research that happened. But I again, I will stress that, like, I think we do just remember a ton from our lives. And the last thing that you said about, was it just a like really memorable time or significant? Like, it was. We established that we were queer. We had our first significant relationships. We established that we were creative, that we could write music.
Yes.
We started writing music, became famous overnight in a strange way, using air quotes, in our hometown of Calgary, and got offered a record deal. I mean, it's a significant time. Our parents split up. We spent years experimenting with drugs and alcohol. It was a very memorable time. I understand why most people want to forget high school. I understand why a lot of people would never revisit their past. But I think for us, it is a special time. It was a tough time, but it was a really significant time. And I think we understood that there was great purpose in sharing the story of our establishing who we were. And so it was worth returning to.
You know, I actually can really relate to that. The time in my life I have pulled the most from creatively is a very similar time. I mean, I was like a little bit skewed, a little bit older, because it was like early college, like at the beginning of it to mid 20s.
Yeah.
But very similar, like, set of things, figuring out the purpose, like what I thought I wanted to do and who I thought I wanted to do this with. And then also like sort of a breakdown of the culture that I'd grown up in, realizing I didn't want to be Catholic, like all those things. So it's writing about something that is as significant as that, to me, felt like, because that's kind of it felt freeing it feels freeing to pull from that time. It also sometimes makes me feel a little bit like I can't catch up with myself. And I'm like, when will I get over this? You know, like that's that's that other side of it, you know? Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I could write another book about high school. How fucked up is that?
No, I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying.
I accidentally told my stepdad, Bruce, that the first draft was over 500 pages, and he keeps texting me, asking me to please send him the full unedited version. Oh, God. And I'm like, I feel you, Bruce.
Do you know, there's also this kind of like interesting, I don't know if I've ever had this experience before. I mean, I've had it briefly when I'm writing music, but there was something really meditative and also very rigorous about the mental part of writing the book that I felt quite, like, even on a subconscious level, I felt really deeply immersed in the story and in that time period. Like, I'm a big dreamer. I'm a vivid dreamer person. I go deep into my dreams and I remember them. They're very detailed. And during the time when we were writing the memoir, I dreamed of myself as a young person again. I dreamed about people who we'd lost, people who had died. I dreamed in the spaces that I was writing about. And so I did feel like there was this like really deep tissue kind of thing happening for me. And I remember when we handed in our final draft of the book, I felt a sort of grief actually about leaving Tegan as a young person and my mom and my stepdad, because that was the last time we all lived together in the same house. And in some ways, I don't remember feeling any of that when it was actually happening. Like, I was so deeply excited, anxious, desperate to get out of that house, out of that city, out of that prison of my own closeted shame and all of that stuff. And while I was terrified, I was also like desperate to get on with it. And in revisiting all that material, I actually sort of suffered a kind of different grief where I longed for and missed my family in a way that I hadn't for years. And I almost didn't want to stop writing about it or thinking about it. However, even though it was painful, like I felt there was a lot of this process, I think even a little bit more than Tegan. I mean, I was in therapy and I was processing a lot of the trauma that had happened to me as a young person, and some of which I didn't want to put in the book and I didn't want to process with the public. I was really specific about wanting to talk about my queer identity without going into some of the other stuff that had really upset me or bothered me or traumatized me as a young person. But so I was also processing a lot of that. And I just was like, I really resonate with what you said. Like, I really remember sitting in therapy and being like, good God, like I just spent a year writing about this time period of my life. I lived through it. Will I ever get past it? How do I get through this?
But I have a question, like, I mean, for both of you, but just responding to what you said, Cameron, like, But I wonder if we're really obsessed with that time in our lives, not just because it was seminal and significant and in some cases traumatizing and informative, but also because there were no stories like ours at that time for us to relate to. And so the way that we can attach to characters, stories, movies, celebrities, idols, musicians now, and see ourselves reflected, there was such an absence of that in our young lives that I wonder if our desire to go back and mine that and to share is just a desire to finally have something to contextualize what we experienced, good and bad. Like it
Absolutely.
just, we didn't have any of that. So we're creating something now that we can attach to. I don't know if
that's absolutely true. And I think it's one thing that's so interesting about you both working on this project is folks can come see you perform live because you're going on tour. They can like listen to your record at home. They can read this book, or they could listen to the audiobook and like hear your old voices, your younger voices. And then also they could go back and find like your early albums, and then they can listen to the Con 10 and like listen to your later voices singing your early songs. Like you are all, the two of you are really creating like a full, like your own universe of things that it's like the Marvel universe where the stuff
we're exactly like Marvel.
We're stuff but where things refer back, to each other and to themselves. And I think to your point about like how much space there is in the world around queer identity, it's literally like we could have this record be like a seminal record in our career. We could also like re-release it with artists that we love covering those songs, and like there's enough space for both of those things because there are very few people still today that are occupying the space that you both are in, so it's literally like you can make work about your work. Like that is actually there's
especially
especially
when you feel
there's need for it.
Especially when you feel like the first time around. I mean, I'm borrowing this from like I had seen a few people say this online, and I thought to myself, geez, that's really accurate. But I don't think we've ever been shy about the fact that we didn't feel realized or understood in the early part of our career or in the early part of our lives. And when you don't feel that, it nags at you. And I think this desire to go back and, number one, most importantly, I wanted to go back and look at that time period of my life and decide for myself what I remember feeling about it, thinking about it. I wanted to hear the music again. I wanted to see the video again. I didn't want that sort of distorted monster under the bed feeling I had about high school to exist anymore.
Yes.
I wanted to go back and force myself to look at those memories, to look at my body, to listen to that music. And I wanted to see it again and reprocess it, and then reprocess it again and again and again until I felt like I could really see myself. And
go on tour and play that footage in front of an audience and not want to die.
No, but I think it's like, I think that's a significant sort of like a really like therapeutic process. And then publicly, I wanted to force the people who I felt had not seen us the first time. I want them to go back and see us again. And I want them to look at us again and tell me that they don't see something different than they did the first time.
That's
because
so
to
wild.
me, it feels real.
So what was the last thing you said?
That I feel like we all should go back and reprocess that time. I want I want journalists to do it. I want the fans to do it, and I want to do it. And I want to do it because I feel like it might be the only way for me to get over how misunderstood, misrepresented, how the homophobia that existed, the misogyny that existed in that we were being critiqued through that very specific lens. And I demand to be reconsidered. I want my art to be reconsidered through today's 2019 lens.
So you have become the adult that took your teen self seriously.
I thank you for putting it so succinctly. I feel like for the first time, I realized that narrative in my brain was not my own. Mm-hmm. It was the society and the culture and the adults who, like, our first press, I really, really sort of like, I couldn't get over our early press because, and I never could exactly tell people why. I mean, I could tell them lots of things about why I felt upset. But all of a sudden, I'm sitting in therapy, I'm 38 years old, and I'm crying and I'm saying, I'm telling my therapist about what people you would say about us. And all of a sudden I realized like these were 30, 40, 50-year-old men talking about my 17-year-old body, my 17-year-old songs, my 17-year-old heart. And it suddenly made me feel enraged. And I just thought to myself, I want to protect the younger me, and I want to give the younger me the credit I think I deserve. And part of that process was like learning, like as much as like this sounds like very like touchy-feely therapy, I needed to go back and learn how to love myself and see myself without all of that bullshit that I felt when I was 17. Like I read a bad review where somebody would like say, there was a review when we were in high school in grade 12, we were in the biggest music magazine in Calgary, and there was we were on the cover of the magazine. And there was a huge, big, long article with us. And the whole first page of the article is about how much this guy hates the kind of music we make. He literally says, I have to go and get like basically piss drunk to listen to this kind of music. And then he talks about how...
But then he loves it.
But then he loves us, and he's so surprised. And yes, sure, fine. We don't sing very well, and our guitar playing is pretty rudimentary. But like he thinks we're the future of this kind of music. And I think about it now, and I thought like, what a compliment at 17. I just thought to myself, lucky me that this guy was able to withstand the horror of listening to our music and saw a future for us. Thank you, sir. And now I'm at 38. I'm like, you're a dick face. Like, fuck you. You know, like what kind of music journalism is that?
It's the whole thing. I mean, yes, of course.
Today's episode of Queery is sponsored by Pact Apparel. Based in Boulder, Colorado, Pact makes organic, sustainable, eco-friendly, clothes for all types of folks, as well as bedding and towels. What makes Pact special is their commitment to sustainability without sacrificing style, quality, or cost. Wait, what do you mean? Okay. They only use organic and recycled fabrics, predominantly 100% organic cotton. They are working with cotton that is grown in India, where the climate is perfect for cotton growth. That means no pesticides or toxins are needed, and far less water is required than with non-organic cotton. Also, they use fair trade certified factories. The people who make their clothes are treated fairly and paid a living wage. The textile industry is the second biggest pollutant on our planet, and that is why Pact is stepping in to fulfill a valuable need. If you want to wear clothes that you like and feel good about it, you can head to wearpact.com. That's wearpact.com. Get 20% off your first order by using the code Queery. That's 20% off when you go to wearpact.com and use the code Queery. Today's episode of Queery is sponsored by High School, the upcoming, it's actually currently here, memoir by Tegan and Sara Quinn. Written in alternating chapters from both Sara and Tegan's point of view, the book is a raw account of drugs, alcohol, love, music, and friendship. All of those things that happened in their formative years. The audiobook is narrated by both Tegan and Sara and includes these early rough bedroom recordings of Tegan and Sara's first songs that they wrote in high school, recorded a cassette tape in the 90s, and were rediscovered 20 years later while writing this memoir. Honestly, it's really incredible. I have never heard anything like the audiobook of High School. It's so awesome to hear their old voices, their younger selves, mixed in with the people that I know now. You can buy High School today wherever audiobooks are found. Enjoy.
I've actually been thinking about this a lot recently. I've been thinking a lot about how for a long time, and I certainly have done interviews about this and tried to like relate to older male comics who might be doing the interview, or even like or it's a straight woman, or it's another queer person. I have for a long time, I think, talked about my coming out with like a distance, almost like it was really bad. Like I have jokes about it to take the like gut punch out of it. I talk about, I'll say the sentence, it was really bad. And then now things are great. Cause that's the next question that people ask, like, well, how it's the focus on how'd your family take it? But then there's the focus on
and how is that now? And it's like, well, I'm like fully an adult now. So my folks are like chill with me because they wouldn't be in my life if they were, if this was a problem. I'm an adult. Like it's not, but, this I think has an application to a lot of what we're talking about now as a community, because I even hear queer people constantly minimize the process that young people are going through right now. It's better now. Like that's the same as this sentence that I was saying of like, it was bad, but it's better now. Like we just, I think we're, all obsessed with following this like sort of straight narrative that like we've survived it or whatever. Like individually we've survived it, or as a culture we're in a different place. And we really don't get to spend any time at the beginning of that sentence about like,
when
no,
you
like
fix
straight
things,
up, we got like shit was fucking bad. And I was dropped by the people and places that I trusted, the only people and places that I trusted. And I know in your situation it wasn't exactly the same, but there's like, there are multiple tracks that are you all or folks around you like talking about the concept of homosexuality in the audiobook. And, like I hear the pain in that. And
it's a complex it's really interesting to me to think about where the desire to make it okay for everybody comes from. So when we talk about coming out or coming to terms with our identity or sexuality, or when we talk about the early part of our career, there was a long stretch where I wanted to make it less uncomfortable for the people who loved us and cared about us and the people who work for us who were there. I want to get past, I do have a desire to get past all of that and stop bringing it up and stop being upset about it. A couple of years ago, I got together all the quotes, and we had someone help us do this too, like searched through all of our early press to find all the really disgusting things that people said about us so that we could make a t-shirt and like sell it and then like donate the money. And I felt resistance on every level, even people who work for us, even Sarah. I felt like there was resistance because it's like, don't alienate all these publications, because it was Enemy, Pitchfork,
That wasn't
Spin.
why I was upset.
No, that's what I'm saying. There was a variety of reasons why people didn't want to do this. But for me, I wasn't thinking about anyone else for myself. For me, creating this shirt and acknowledging all the things that were said about us and then putting it out into the world, like owning it and saying, this is the things people said about us, and look at, we made it anyway. Yeah. And we thrived and survived and benefited, and all these other bands I wanted to be compared to, and all these other bands that we were left out of the scene and like, and we're never good as they're gone, and we're still here, and not in like we're like last lesbian standing way, like in a cool, hip, relevant, still really growing kind of way.
Yeah,
and
y'all
I wanted
are cool.
to put the shirt out. Yeah, and I wanted to put the shirt out as a way to say, like, I'm not embarrassed. I'm not ashamed of what people said about us. Yeah. And I'm not even intentionally trying to shame those people. I'm saying, like, look at how much has changed. Like, you wouldn't get away with saying these things about us now. I mean, people can, but not publications, not reputable music publications like that did it, even 10 years ago.
I mean, I think...
For me, the desire to make everybody feel okay about that, to stop wiping the slate clean, to not look back, to not make our managers or the people who worked on our project or the bandmates who laughed along to try to make it seem okay. Like, I want to make it better for everybody, but I think I've hit the point in my life where I don't care if it's uncomfortable to go back and talk about coming out as hard, or our career as hard, or being criticized or being out as hard. And I think, very long-winded way of saying that, I think that that's a battle that I'll always sort of be waging inside of myself. Like, I want to admit how hard it is. I don't want to have to be over it. I want to be okay with saying I felt really uncomfortable and it felt really unfair.
But maybe you can't be over it until, like, I mean, you made a really good point about...
Which one of us, Cameron?
Cameron. Tegan's always making great points. No, but you made a really great point about...
I just wanted to know if I should smile and say thank you, or if I should just...
No, you're making a good point. But I think, Cameron, you said the thing about, like, also too, when things get better, I think there is this sort of, I mean, that we can talk about this in with any community who has been marginalized, discriminated against. We can talk about this with, in any kind of sort of historical context. But like when things improve, no matter how small the improvement is, there is a desire both within the community and outside of it to sort of focus on the good stuff.
Of course.
Let's not go back and dwell on the bad stuff. But what if you never even got to talk about what made you feel bad? Like I didn't get to talk about the fact that I cried and felt, small and scared and ashamed in those situations. I didn't get to talk about that. I didn't get to share that with anybody.
I'm going to get the shirt made for you.
No, I don't want to do the shirt because for me, I also think it was a process for me that I wanted to talk about my own shame and homophobia, and I wanted to talk about my own trauma before I used other people's words to remind people of what it used to feel like for me.
Does that mean we could do the shirt now?
I mean, now I'd probably do the shirt, but I think
Emmy, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Get the
Shirt's being made.
Get the shirt.
I would like
ready.
to please
Get the
have
trauma shirt.
we'll call it the trauma shirt.
I'm going to send you one, Cameron. I'll send you 3.
Yes, I am going to say it was not a shirt, but I have had this same instinct to, something that I did for a while was if somebody would say something, I didn't even do it that many times, but if somebody would say something truly horrible, then like I would tweet that out, take a screenshot of it. And that was years ago. And it just never, it never gave me what I wanted.
Yeah.
There was never, because what I wanted, what was always difficult for me about it was that the response would be either like silence, like shut up, or, oh my God, I'm so sorry that this happened to you this one time, essentially.
Yeah. And
I still feel like this sort of is the vibe that we like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. Oh my God, I can't believe this, like sort of shock. And that's actually why I don't really talk about this stuff, because I think the only thing that would feel good to me is not, and I can't control people's reactions. And so I just have to share it with people that are more safe than in the universe. Because the only thing that would feel good to me is for somebody to say, oh my God, I can't believe this is what your entire experience of the world is. Like it's not this,
I have this vision of
atypical comment. It's
I want someone to like flip
everything.
out. Like I want to like tell a straight person like, I feel really upset because of homophobia, and they just go mad. Like they just like flip like a couch over, and they're like I just want them to flip out, and then you go like, oh my God, calm down, it's okay, I'm fine. Like
or
that
even,
might maybe
even
like,
other
that might
queer
make me
people,
feel better.
Even other queer people, because I do feel sometimes that even other queer people just like it, like
that's
folks
our fight.
that are
but that's
having
our
a
fight
distance.
though. Like I would say like, Tegan, I'm so upset about this thing, and Tegan would go, can we put it under the rug? Like, can we just leave it alone? Like, we would have that battle with each other, because there was times in Tegan's life where she was like, hey, it got better, Sarah. I don't know if you heard about it, but it did. Hashtag it got better.
Don't have a twin, and so I've had that fight within my own body. By the way, just in case if you don't have a counterpoint out there in the world, this conversation of like focus on the good and like it got better and like let's move forward and like no fuck this, like people need to know about this, like that. I think that's every, to your point about people from marginalized community, I think that's literally like the like.
Do you think
I've even done it in this
inside
interview?
of our hearts.
I was so into this, and then I'm like, the two of you need to get over it. Okay?
Yeah,
like
that's
it can
right.
happen
Fucking
in like
tell
5
us
minutes.
to shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up. Move on.
I want to say, can I just say one final thing about this? This has also been something that
But this is the final thing. If you ever bring it up again,
I will never bring it up again.
We'll
I'll never
activate
bring
the
it up
trapdoor
again.
that is under your seat.
What I've also learned about myself is that in talking about these things, what I was really avoiding talking about was how much I hated myself. It was always about how other people hated me. It was always about the world at large. It was always about, well, I had this one experience and it made me feel really, really, really bad. Oh, I'm so sorry that experience happened to you. Geez, I still feel like garbage. And I think what I have struggled with is talking about my own homophobia, my own internalized homophobia. And I don't mean I hate gay people. I mean, I hate myself. And so in those experiences, when I would read these terrible things, what I struggled with was that it proved to me, it was evident, it was this like huge file folder in my brain that was proving yes, you are this crappy person. Yes, you are gross. Yes, the feelings that you've had since you were a little kid are bad. They're wrong. There's something about you that deserves this. And I think in talking about my own homophobia, I have felt that weight lessen. And I feel like the more that I think about when I was able to assign a reason, like why do I feel all this self-hatred? Oh, that is part of feeling homophobic. I feel this way because people made me feel bad, or I associated really bad things with being gay before I even knew that I was gay or that I was associated. Like, Tegan, I'm sure will be horrified by this, but like one of the things that I started to realize, people have been asking me and Tegan a lot, like representation questions. Like, did you have representation when you were young? Did you have books like the one you wrote?
Again.
And I was like, no, I didn't. And I was like, and someone asked me, like, do you remember when you learned about homosexuality? Like, and I'm not talking about like little kids calling each other gay on the playground. Like, and for me, I know that I learned about homosexuality. I learned the word homosexuality because of Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer who killed gay men.
God. You don't have to tell me who Jeffrey Dahmer is.
I mean,
Yeah. Dissolving
I
bodies.
was in third grade. And I used to read the Calgary Sun because we had a subscription to the Calgary Sun. I loved the Calgary Flames, the hockey team, and I would read the stats and scores. And that sort of evolved into reading the newspaper, which was a little above my emotional. I shouldn't have been reading the newspaper front to back unsupervised, but I was. No offense to my parents, but like little too much darkness in there. And during the summer where all the stuff with Jeffrey Dahmer was happening, I was figuring out what homosexuality was and starting to make a loose link to what I was. So like and that's not an anecdote. That's not me trying to be funny. That is how if you go back into your origin story and your earliest memory of what you might be is a serial killer who eats other gay people.
Yeah, that's, yep.
There's a lot to unpack
That's
there.
also in the Marvel universe.
But it's like there's a lot to unpack there. And it's like, so when I start to think about like, where does my homophobia come from? Where does my deep cellular discomfort come from? It's because I didn't have any good feelings, any good examples, any good stories, nothing. And you have to unpack that. You have to talk about that and unpack it.
I mean, for me, a lot of this is also tied to misogyny. For me, misogyny intersects with my homophobia in like such a strong way because I was never enough of a woman in a culture where like women were really just for babies.
And modeling.
Honestly, Catholics don't even give a shit about modeling.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, fair
My
enough.
specific culture, straight up just for babies, or you can
Jesus
be a
was
nun.
the only model.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
Jesus was the only model.
could be a nun,
Got it.
sort of. But
Sort of.
yeah, sort of. That's okay. I'm curious about having like seen the. Well, first of all, the way you are describing yourselves in the book, like getting first bras or having like really long hair, and then there's photos that go along with that, and y'all look like normal goofball teens. Like you look very of the era, and then I see you both today. I know how you present yourselves, and I also know that it like really has changed over time with different albums and also as you've gotten older. What is it like for you to see the pictures of those people and then be sort of trying to figure out where to position yourself as you go and sell this book? Like I like opened it up and was like, because I had seen some of the like the publicity photos. Like I'd seen some of the photos that you are doing and the look that you have right now, which is sort of like a more soft makeup than I've seen in the past from some of you, from some of the other stuff that you've done. And then you both have kind of, what is this, chin length hair right now? And so it's like other times, other times you've had like, I have like
headphone
fucked
length.
up hair. Yeah, headphone length hair. Yeah, other times you're like, I have a fucked up
Slightly
like
above
punk
the
rock
collarbone
hair
hair.
or
Yeah.
like, like really intense eye makeup or something. And you're just kind of looking like adult humans, but also you're looking maybe more
Youthful, thank
feminine
you.
in the face than sometimes I've seen your makeup look. So like,
Yeah.
what does this all feel like?
Well, I'll say this. First of all, that I think we do look like normal teenagers too. And I think that's
Yes.
how I knew it was okay to go back and write this book, was that it had been long enough and there was enough distance that when I look at the pictures, I see very sweet, very cute, very normal looking teenagers. And
I hate this word normal, though.
normal meaning like we were really weird. We're wearing like gigantic raver pants. And what I'm saying is that up until this point in my life, when I looked back at that era of photos and that time in my life, I felt disgusted with myself. I was like, ugh, we dress so gross. I have so much acne. My hair is so ugly. Why didn't I get a haircut? Why did I dress like that? And now I look back and I'm like, we just look like teenagers. We look sweet.
I'm sorry for the word normal. You're right to push back on that word. I think I'm simply
Shame on you.
Allow me to further illustrate what I mean. You know how there's like one person in high school who like really knew how the fuck to do their hair?
Yes.
And like really knew how to like tweeze their eyebrows in a way that was like completely in alignment with what culture expected, and where you looked at them and you said, I assume you have found your look and will keep this forever.
And they do.
And we have some friends like that.
That was not me in high school.
No,
and
not
based on
us
these
either.
photos, this also was not you.
No, it wasn't us. And, a big part of, again, like a big part of going back and writing this book was, as Sara said earlier, rewriting this narrative that had been written by everybody else that we had adopted as our own. Because I think that for us, a really big transition happened as soon as we graduated. Literally on our 18th birthday, which was 2 months after we graduated, we shaved our heads. And we sort of became kind of anti-establishment. We kind of decided that we wanted to kind of forge our own path and embrace our alternativeness. And we weren't yet out, but I think this was like our first step towards acknowledging that we were going to be different and that was going to entail a different path for us than maybe other people like that we were friends with, but also other artists. And I think for me, when it came time to sort of look at how to market this new book, High School, but also the record, Hey, I'm Just Like You, starting with the title itself, was this tonal energy and mood of getting down off the stage, getting down off the platform that we've sort of been put up on, but also have helped build for the last 20 years, and become one with like our audience and the world and culture and our community and ourselves, and return back to time where we weren't, iconic international pop rock duo,
absolutely.
Tegan and Sara, and just kind of just be us again. And kind of just, there's definitely a nod to that time in the way that we're, strategically dressing, I guess, but also that's just happening in culture right now. I feel like there's just like people like the 90s again.
90s
and
are
it's
back.
Like, cool. We don't have to wear super skin tight jeans. We can have maybe a slight taper. That's great.
Right.
But, I don't know, like we're kind of just embracing it. But I think part of it is just, just returning to a bit more of our core self.
This is so funny because I feel like we are somehow on this extremely parallel journey. When you were talking about that, something I've thought about in the last couple of years is how like I don't get to be at my shows. I think I've even talked to you both about this, or Tegan, specifically you. I think we've talked about this. It's like, I don't mean that I think I'm the world's most significant artist, but I simply mean that I created the atmosphere that I wanted to exist in the world, but I don't get to be at that show.
You'll never get to go to your show. You'll never get to experience
audience. And so for me, when you're talking about getting down off the stage, that is literally something I have done this year, is gone and sat in the audience, because there's a feeling of like, I didn't feel heard. So then I took up some space to shout for a while. And then I felt a little bit more heard by my community, but I felt fucking apart, and I was tired of feeling apart. So hey, we're just like you. Same. We're all
what's also
just trying to figure out how to have community.
Totally. But also I think Sara and I are at the part of the career. Sara said this now like a month ago or something on stage at this event that we were doing, but she was like, we're past the part of giving a fuck what anyone thinks, like, and not in a bad way, not in a mean, like I'm going to do something bad and I don't care and there's no consequence, like meaning we're just at, it's cliche, but we hit the age where it's just like, I don't know, we're good. We're good at what we do. We're going to keep putting everything
That's
we are
right.
into the thing. And you're either going to really like it or you're not, but we're not going to strategically make ourselves into the thing that we think people will want, even if it's an alternative thing. And the other thing that's happening is that Sara and I have been around long enough that we are not that, and we're the kinds of artists, like, I'm done if I'm just going to play the same game over and over again. I don't want to do it. If I'm bored, if I'm not 100% invested, then what is the point of doing this? And that's a really thrilling and also terrifying place to be in your career. And, we're about to go out tomorrow night. Is going to be, I think that tomorrow night's the first show. I mean, now when this airs, it won't be, but
Yeah.
we're about to go out on this tour and do something really different than we've ever done. And, we have all these surprises in store for people, but it's also a surprise for us. Like, what will it feel like we're singing each other's songs on stage? There are points where Sarah's not on stage and I'll be on stage alone, which we've never done. And Sarah's on stage without me. And it feels really uncomfortable, and that feels really exciting because
Sure.
in addition to never getting to participate in the culture that we helped to build and create, I also never get to experience what it's like to be my own person, which you and I have also talked a lot about. Like,
Yeah.
and Sara and I are in a very respectful, tug of war at all times for space for ourselves in this, duo that we appreciate being in and this collaboration that we've thrived in. But I think for the first time in our career, we're taking steps to try to really actually stand out on our own. And the book was a part of that.
Right.
We're on the page, one singular voice at a time. And that's really scary. For the first time, you can really hear Sarah's voice and you can really hear mine.
Well, I know that you both have a hard out. And so I want to just ask you before you head back into your day to shout out a Queero. Person, place, or thing made you feel like you can be who you are today. And do either of you have one?
I'm like,
Sarah?
I'm trying to think of like something that sort of ties into the era of this book and album. I think, as much as I talk about how there was a lack of representation, I mean, there were little glimpses for me of things that that gave me a little bit of hope. Sort of not for the reason you would expect. Ani DeFranco was really interesting to me when I was a teenager. She didn't play the kind of music that I was listening to, but I remember having that ping of like, this is something, like, while it doesn't look, sound, interact with me the way that all the other things I'm interested in, I should investigate this further. And specifically Living in Clip, the live album, I was thinking about this while I was writing the memoir, but growing up in our family, we listened to Bruce Springsteen live a lot. Like,
Sure.
he had like a live album, and I loved live albums. I loved the sound of an audience. That was like thrilling to me. Like, I can remember
Because you were picturing yourself as the artist. so-
sometimes, and just like the sort of like fierceness and the sort of like vastness of like a huge audience cheer.
Sure.
Just probably that's how like people get like.
Yeah.
That's probably like guys get excited at sports games or whatever. Like, I would get excited listening to like Bruce Springsteen like get a cheer in like an arena.
Girls
or
get
something.
excited by sports too.
I know, but I was thinking,
Yes.
yeah. I
It's
know,
a
but
problematic
You know what?
interview.
Fine. I'm sure lots of girls lay awake at night listening to the sound of a football crowd cheering and
Yes,
get excited. But
yes.
so, anyways, but I used to get excited by that, and it was occurring to me as I was thinking about Ani DeFranco and what she meant to me when I was in high school, because I didn't know that much about her sexuality beyond that somebody said that she was bisexual in some interview. But what thrilled me about her was that in her Living in Clip, in her live recordings, the audience sounded really different than the Bruce Springsteen audience. I wouldn't have made this association probably at the time,
Sure.
but her audience sounded like women.
Sure. That makes sense.
And-
Yes.
And I think as a young person, it was probably the first time that as I was laying in bed listening to something, that I heard the sound of a different kind of an audience, like a different kind of like click or different kind of scene. And I wouldn't have known to think, like, I didn't have words for that. I didn't have a shape for that at the time. But like, I think it did signal something that was like different to me. And that was, I don't know. When I look back at Ani DeFranco, like I sort of had like a brief love affair with Ani DeFranco, like musically, like I sort of like listened to her during a very specific time. And then I kind of like moved into a very different genre I listened to like weird electronic music. Like, I don't listen to Ani DeFranco, but
We got it.
She's kind of like a hero. No, but I just mean like she's remained.
Guys, Sara doesn't listen, loves and respects Ani DeFranco, but it's not really her kind of music.
No.
She likes electronic music. She likes NPR.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just mean like she's remained this significant holdover for me because like a lot of the music I listened to in high school, I wouldn't like. I don't. No offense to Smashing Pumpkins and Billy Corgan, but like I would not be like Billy Corgan's still my hero. Like he was my hero when I was 15, but like I don't think a lot about Billy Corgan very much in my life anymore. But like Ani DeFranco remains this kind of glimmer of hope for me from my adolescence. That not just because of the music or sexuality, but because she was living this kind of life. I think I knew would be
she's doing a different
something
thing.
would jive with me. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. I think she's gotten into some white people nonsense in the last couple of years. But before that happened, I introed her at an event for the Women's March. And it's funny because I just feel like that person, whenever she meets anybody who looks like they were maybe alive in the 90s, like it's like literally we didn't even say anything to each other. I'm just like, you know what you did. You know, like Ani DeFranco is like, there was no one else. You know what? So anyway,
there was nothing else.
Yeah.
It was just, it was huge.
Yeah.
It was totally huge.
Tegan,
and she would swear in her songs. Oh, I loved her. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's.
I'm gonna pick like I'm just really I'm gonna use a teenager word, but I'm like very shook by what's happening in queer music, like LGBTQ identified artists that are blowing up right now. There's just this like unbelievable scene of artists, and I'm just so like all of them impress me so deeply. You know, a lot of it is not just because they're really talented and they're doing really great and they're doing this dance with the mainstream that's really cool, that looks familiar and but it's also how they're bringing in their personal lives and how they're bringing in their identity, because there's been lots of really successful queer artists over the last 2 decades, but they've been very like hesitant to bring up their lives. They really didn't want to be perceived as just a queer artist, which is I completely understand. I go through that a lot of times too. But like I love the narrative around Shora's new record about falling in love and speaking so specifically about her relationship. And I love Muna's like attempt at like, you know, they're being cheeky, but that they're creating heroes for themselves, in themselves, like this, the sort of like levels of self-love there, or the way that Brandi Carlile, again, doing this pretty wild dance with the mainstream right now in commercial music and commercial communities, but then is constantly talking about her wife and children online. And I'm just deeply impressed with just how quickly some of these artists have not just embraced, like I think about Janelle Monáe and what a journey she's been on the last couple of years, in that she didn't just embrace who she is, how she's just consistently pushing the boundary of where and how much. And it's pretty awesome. Like, I think they're all pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, I want to really congratulate you both on the book. You have individually very impressive vocabularies, and you write beautiful prose, which is like no surprise to me, because I care about your writing in general. I was not surprised to find that I cared about your writing in book form. So huge congratulations! It's really big and brave to branch into a new medium, and I'm excited for you on the tour. And as you know, Tegan Rain Quinn, Sara Kirsten Quinn, I consider you individual people. Thank you both for spending time with me today. I wish you good luck with the rest of your press.
Thanks, Cameron.
Thank you.
Cheers.